Hi. So today I have a special guest, Dr. MaryAndres, who I like to refer to as a Yoda of bisexual therapy or bisexual affirmative therapy. And today we will be talking about coming out when dating. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So I imagine you've seen a lot of clients over your years, over your career. What are some of the issues that have to do with bisexuals and coming out when dating?
I think a lot of bisexuals worry about how they're going to be accepted as being bisexual. And so when they're dating, it's like, when am I going to tell? How am I going to tell the person that I'm seeing? And just even the nervousness about I like someone, but even before they get to the place of going out, worrying that they might be rejected potentially because of being bi.
When should a person tell the person they're dating that they're bisexual?
When they feel like the person matters to them. You know, because in some respects, it's an identity piece. So talking about yourself, we have different layers of what we share, and we have private parts of ourselves and we have public parts of ourselves. So somebody can look at you and know how tall you are. They can make some assumptions about your race. They may not know whether or not you're a diabetic or an epileptic, or they might not know if you've ever lived overseas. So there's different layers of what we share about ourselves. And when we're getting to know somebody, a lot of times we match what they tell us. So
Okay.
You love Disneyland, I love Disneyland. You know, people will do that kind of a thing. And you're also reading the other person. It's like, oh, well, gee, I don't know if they will be okay with this part of me.
Right.
So if you're not sure and you don't know that you care about them, why bring up a difficult conversation?
So you're saying it's okay to date someone and not bring up the fact that you're bisexual?
When you haven't gotten to the place where you think, oh, they matter and I want it to go someplace. There's a place where private becomes more public, because if we don't tell, we feel like we're keeping a secret.
Right.
And that's the part where it feels like, gosh, we're really getting close and we're feeling connected, and I feel like I'm not being authentic anymore.
Right.
And when we care about being authentic, that's an important part that we would want to talk to the person about.
And you mentioned a great word earlier when we were talking about it, intimacy.
Uh-huh.
When you feel you want to be intimate with someone,
Yeah.
is a good time to come out as well.
Yeah. This is a part of me telling you who I am, because you care. You care about me and I care about you now, so I want you to know me. And this is the real me.
So the big question is, say you're in a relationship and you feel intimacy growing,
Yeah.
and you feel like you want to share this, like, how would you recommend that someone tell the person they're dating that they're bisexual?
I don't tell people what to do, so I explore with them. What would you imagine happening? So if I'm working with somebody clinically and you're telling me about somebody you're going out with, what we might do is role play, in a sense.
Okay.
Like, well, let's imagine some scenarios. When would you imagine that this would be a kind of conversation that you could have? How could you bring it up? And part of that is because it's going to feel individualized for each relationship.
Okay.
I will say that sometimes for important conversations, it's good to have them when you're walking side by side. You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because sometimes people feel trapped when you're sitting across from
yes.
each other. You know?
Yes.
And if you're walking, I always have this sense, if I'm on a hike with somebody and we're having a difficult conversation, I could bolt whenever I want to. Now, I don't. I usually stay, but having that flexibility of thinking that I could flee makes those courageous conversations a little bit easier to have.
And honestly, one of the things that kind of pops in my head about that is the fact that, when you're at a dinner, for example, you're staring at each other and you say something, it's all about, looking into the person's eyes and judging what they're doing. But when you're walking side by side, it allows the other person to not feel like they're trapped in that situation.
Exactly.
And allow them to kind of come up with something that's a little more fluid and maybe even be more accepting of it, because they don't feel the pressure of having to have the right answer and the right response up here and all that stuff as well.
Right. It gives you a little bit more space. It doesn't feel as intimate and as pressured.
What great advice. So how much of so you're in a relationship and you're dating someone who is not of the same orientation.
Uh-huh.
How much of your sexual history do you share?
So that's, again, comes down to who's the person you're dating. Like for some people, they're insanely jealous. And if you're dating somebody who is super jealous, I wouldn't give them a whole lot of information because that haunts the jealous person. But if you're dating somebody who's turned on by your sexual history and you're using that as part of your foreplay, dole it out.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
Done that before.
see? So there's variance, and a lot of it has to do with every dyad is a you and a me, and you and I are going to be different in whatever dyad that is. And so we're going to pay attention to how do I guess that this person's going to receive the information I want to share. And then we share, we allow the person to be able to process that, and then we share more and we move on.
Let me ask you this,
Yeah.
because I have her hair and she's so good. She's got personal hair. So I was once dating this woman, and I came out to her as being bisexual, and she completely rejected me for it. But we remained friends because, I don't know, I was stupid or something. Anyway, we remained friends. And then later on, she came around. Like after, like I took it as just rejection, like this is permanent. She will never change her mind on this.
Yeah.
And I need to shut these feelings off. And I did. And then, you know, weeks later, she suddenly started coming on to me like that whole thing wasn't an issue.
Wow.
Is that like, how does one handle that situation of rejection? Like, what is the best way that one can, you know, navigate that?
So part of it is not taking it personally. And so think about this with coming out in the first sense, like with parents. I know this is hard because you just got shut down. Okay, but think about this. Like how old were you when you came out to your folks?
Oh, very recently.
Very recently?
Yeah, very recently.
Okay.
So we're talking like late 30s.
Okay, so did they have any idea beforehand?
No.
And so how was that experience?
I did it over the internet. I recommend by email because of the whole walking side by side thing. You don't bring the pressure on them. So I came over by like I did a still bisexual video.
Oh, okay.
And I sent it to her, and then she responded back.
Okay. So what happened is you knew for a long time, but when you told your parents, they had no clue.
Yes.
And so it takes people a while sometimes, like, oh, this is new information. I never thought about this. And that's kind of what the woman you were dating had to do. Her first reactions felt too intense. And that's what you took personally, her first reactions. Yeah. But as she worked through those things, she's like, and it's a cost-benefit analysis. Like, Alex is awesome. Alex also likes to hook up with guys. How do I weigh that out?
How do I weigh that out?
And then she's like, oh, 3 weeks without Alex. I think I can tolerate a little boy action on the side. I want Alex back. So that's what happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when dealing with rejection, then you kind of have to. I mean, do you go into it thinking that I will be rejected or I could be rejected? Like, how does one kind of approach that?
You could, but you know, talking about sexual fluidity, what's so great now is that there's so many kind of variants of characters that we have. You can be watching a television show, you could be watching Transparent and then see a character who is behaving bisexual on a show or something, and they're showing up everywhere, so you don't even have to have cable to find a bisexual character anymore. Right. And so you might use kind of a cultural reference to bring up, you know, something. Sure. So that might be one way. And so then what you're doing is you're thinking about it in terms of concentric circles. We're talking about this as a general principle first. Right. And have you ever known anybody bisexual? And so you're bringing it closer to closer because you're starting to understand what their attitudes are. Because some people have no exposure. So some people have been brought up with a lot of bias. Some people have a lot of stereotypes. I personally identify as bisexual, and I have a friend who is lesbian. At one point, she made some disparaging comment about she would never date a bi woman, and we're not romantically attracted to each other at all. And I said, you know I'm bi, don't you? And she was mortified that she had made this biphobic comment to me because we'd been friends for years. Right. But it wasn't one of those things where we had ever necessarily talked about that. And she had seen me at those times partnered with women, and she just made that assumption that I was lesbian identified. And I'm like, oh no, I just haven't necessarily seen you, or it's similar to you with guys. You just don't bring the guys around typically. Right. Yeah.
So am I right with saying there's probably like a 3-step process to coming out for being bisexual with someone you're dating, whereas you first find out what their references to bisexuality is, their understanding, and then you can come out to them maybe a good idea walking side by side somewhere. And then there's kind of like a recovery period where you just kind of, you don't take anything too personally. The initial response you take too personally, unless it's positive. But if it's negative, you don't take it too personally. You kind of give the person a little bit of space to kind of settle in with the idea.
Right, yeah. I mean, for some people, depending on who it is, that might be one of those conversations that comes up really early because they tell you something early and, oh, here's my opening, I can tell them. Like if you're dating somebody and they make a strong biphobic comment, you're like, well, I actually identify as bi. And you might want to say that and let them, you're not super invested at that point, so let them kind of backpedal and try to figure it out, or them draw that line and just say, oh, I don't know that I could date you if you're bisexual. You haven't invested a lot yet, so you might want to get it out of the way early in those situations, but not take it personally. The reality is like, don't work too hard. There are going to be enough people that are going to care about you. And so find somebody where they are genuinely coming towards you and authentically invested in getting to know you. And so this is another piece that they have to accommodate about you. And not see it as, oh, this is a liability, but because I appreciate you, I just recognize this,
Right. And keep in mind that that is if you're dating someone who isn't also bisexual. You know that I have a particular bias towards bisexuals dating other bisexuals, but that's another topic. But I'd like to thank you for being here for this video. We learned so much. I learned so much that I'm probably going to apply at some point very soon. But if you have any questions, is there a way that people get a hold of you?
Yeah, they could. My Gmail address is MaryAndres@gmail.com.
And I'll put it down in the description along with any other links that we might have talked about in this video. And I'm sure we're going to do some more videos. So if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe because we do many videos on the bisexual topic. And until next time, stay cooler, my bisexual friend. Stay cooler. Bye.
Bye.